Welcome to Battlebots Previews and Predictions, Episode 2 of Season 5. Sadly, due to YouTube issues, I only got Episode 1 up just as the show was airing in America, so not too many people saw it, but that's okay. That's fine. I'm still happy and motivated to keep doing this. But more importantly, the show itself was excellent. We had some great fights, we saw some really interesting changes to the season, such as the bot whisperer Pete Abrahamson. I'm really looking forward to his contributions this season. The new logo, the new floor, I think the new floor looks amazing. No more cobalt situations from last season. The opera boxes that the teams all stand in, they look really well done and give us a chance to look at all the teams' reactions to the different fights. In terms of actual predictions, I don't think I did that well. I only got 4 out of 8. So if you're looking for professional opinions from someone who knows what they're talking about, maybe not the video for you, perhaps, based on last week's performance. But that's fine. I think the biggest mistake that I made was underestimating Malice. And I think we'll get to that later in the episode, looking at 2 of the robots that are fighting tonight. Pleasantly surprised by Rusty. That was a fantastic performance. And the Smee Sharko fight was honestly pretty difficult to predict and judge, I'm sure. Anyway, that's enough about episode 1. We've seen it, it's done, it's dusted. Let's move on to episode 2. Okay, let's chat about our first fight of the night. It is between a robot who was a rookie last season in Shatter and a team that's returning from 2016, Ghost Raptor. Adam Wrigley has stuck with this unique design for the past few years. We've seen the hammer and omni-wheel combination appear in robo games with Mega Melvin and in King of Bots and This Is Fighting Robots with Blue. For Battlebots 2019, he added the ablative armor and the forks on the front, and he has evolved this once again into the robot that you see before you now. Changes from last season, it appears more pink and blue, which, I don't know, might be an homage to the robot that he fought with over in China. And he's also lengthened the forks on the front to help deal, presumably, with vertical spinners for the most part. The saber-toothed tiger is back. Ghost Raptor. The robot that, as put by Dracophile over on Battlebots Update, fights like a helicopter crash. Hopefully this year Chuck Pitzer will be more spin and win and less elbows and knees, as Ghost Raptor has been in the past. Now, I don't want to take away from Chuck Pitzer's credentials here. He's had an amazing run in robot combat, especially when you look back at his history in classic Battlebots. He had a multitude of lightweight robots in classic Battlebots, including a heavyweight as well, Tripulta Raptor. You also had Praetor Raptor appearing in post-classic Battlebots. And into modern Battlebots, he's brought Ghost Raptor. He was there for Seasons 1 and 2, and did really well in Season 1. He came in the top 4, believe it or not, only being beaten by the eventual champion Bite Force. Season 2 was a much less successful run, where he got roundly beaten by Son of Whyachi and also Razorback. This evolution of Ghost Raptor looks a lot more bare bones. Instead of the long spinning bar that was prone to breakage in his first couple of seasons, he's now got a more chunky bar, which looks a lot less spindly. That change seems to have come at the expense of a lot of structural rigidity, I think. It seems to me it's got some shock absorption built into the frame, but other than that, it looks really open and really bare, and honestly quite vulnerable. I almost feel like the first hit it takes from a horizontal spinner specifically, there's just going to be chains and wheels everywhere. I don't know how this is going to hold up to a really powerful kinetic energy weapon. Thankfully for Chuck Pitzer, that's not something he has to worry about here, as he is up against a hammer bot, which will make for a very interesting matchup, especially since Ghost Raptor doesn't really have much on it that Shatter can strike. It looks like it's a very easy robot to miss with the hammer. But if Shatter does land a blow, then it's likely to hit something vulnerable. So much important stuff on Ghost Raptor just seems to be exposed, and I don't think that weapon provides enough coverage to protect from overhead attacks. When thinking about Ghost Raptor on the attack, you have to remember that the only reason that Shatter got knocked out the one time that it did last season was because the hammer stopped working and it got flipped over. It was nothing to do with the actual body of the robot being breached. So a lot like last season, you can expect Shatter to take a lot of cosmetic damage from Ghost Raptor, but ultimately not be affected structurally. And unless Ghost Raptor manages to disable the hammer mechanism and flip Shatter over somehow, I don't think Shatter's going to be knocked out. And I think a 3-minute long battle will give Adam Wrigley enough chance to pick his shots and hit something incredibly important on Ghost Raptor, because a lot of the important stuff looks very vulnerable. And so for that reason, I'm going to go for Shatter by knockout. David Jin returns and will once again lead his team of students from WPI into battle with their robot, Ribot. This modular robot debuted last season and had a main season record of 2-2, which I feel was pretty impressive. This robot definitely surprised a lot of people, especially in their defeat of Endgame. Despite being modular, they mainly used their vertical spinning weapon last season, who can blame them, but they also have access to a lifter and an undercutter at least. And the frog itself is now actually made of a different material, since the foam that they used last season is now a banned substance. And they're fighting against Tracer, which seems to have taken over from the Bite Force color scheme, since Bite Force won't be here this season. Jason Woods competed in classic Battlebots with a robot called Ribot a long time ago. It's not a robot that gained much fame, it went 0-2. He's back now with a vertical spinning weapon on the front of a robot that doesn't have a traditional frame. All the robot's components are independent and are centered around the main weapon shaft. The most intriguing thing about this robot, however, is the mini-bot. The mini-bot has a unique lifting mechanism which is able to ensnare opponents, lift them off the ground, and make sure that they don't have any perches on the arena floor, so the main robot can come in and smash them. Regarding the actual battle, I think the kids from WPI will attach their vertical spinning weapon, since that is what they used against other vertical spinners that they've fought, such as Endgame and Falcon. I'm also not sure if Tracer will actually run their mini-bot, since their lifting mechanism on that robot doesn't actually have that much reach, and Ribot has a fair amount of ground clearance under the chassis. I figure it will be very difficult for that mechanism to lift the wheels of Ribot off the ground. It's always hard to judge how a new robot will go in its first battle, but I suspect Tracer will make a good fist of this. However, Ribot does have the record on its side. The two battles against vertical spinners, Endgame and Falcon, are the two battles that they won from the main season last year. Ribot has proven to be very durable as well, and unless Tracer can get round and attack the tires, I don't see too many vulnerabilities on this robot that have been exploited in the past. Its loss to Sawblaze was due to Jameson being able to exploit the high ground clearance and take the wheels off the ground in that way, and against Kraken, Ribot just didn't seem to have the reach. And in the exhibition match against Valkyrie, they just straight conked out, which I don't expect to happen here. So yeah, given Ribot's record against vertical spinners and the fact that Tracer is a completely new robot, I'm gonna have to give it to the kids from WPI here, and I'm gonna give it to them by knockout. I think they have a lot of power in that weapon, and Tracer could end up with some of those first-year gremlins. What's Kraken? This is Kraken. It's a robot built by Matt Spurk. It's the only pneumatic crusher at Battlebots, and has been competing since Season 3. It started off looking like it was going to be a perennial undercard robot, but with impressive showings against Lockjaw and Red Devil, it actually started showing itself to be a worthy design. It followed that up with a win in its first fight in Season 4 against Ribot, but from that point on it was put up against some real contenders for the top 16, Blacksmith, Wanhu and Son of Whyachi, and didn't muster another victory in the main season. They returned this season with a faster bite, shinier paint job, and fresh hopes for a top 16 berth. However, it is up against a top 16 robot from last season, the winners of the Desperado tournament, and the only team this year competing from Brazil. Team Warrior from Itajubá, Brazil, led by Gabriel Silveira Teles, sporting a very similar look to last season. The main addition to this season's version of Black Dragon are the wedgelets at the front, which is definitely understandable given the way Lockjaw defeated Black Dragon in the round of 16 last season. Granted, 2019 was Team Warrior's first foray into Battlebots, but they have way more experience than just that. They've competed consistently at robo games with robots such as their lightweight, Federal MT, and the middleweight General. They've won on 3 occasions in the lightweight category, 2 occasions in the middleweight category, so these guys know how to win a competition. They're not here to mess around. And I think we all know the Brazilian attitude to this sport. Don't take it lightly when I say that Black Dragon is just as optimized as Minotaur from Ribots. So having said that, I'd say there is a little bit of a quality disparity in this fight between Black Dragon and Kraken. However, we have seen Kraken be able to get underneath vertical spinners before and not allow those weapons to actually make contact with any parts of its body. That long wedge in the front is deceptively effective at countering wedgelets and forks of robots that want their weapons to get closer. However, we have seen the damage that can be caused to Kraken once those vertical spinners do hit. And I think that even for all the experience that Matt Spurk has, the Brazilian team will probably have him covered in terms of Black Dragon's maneuverability and ability to get around to the sides or on an angle to that wedge so they can get underneath the main body of Kraken and start doing damage to the important parts. I reckon we will see Kraken get underneath Black Dragon at least 1 or 2 times, bring those teeth down, even perhaps on the weapon if they're brave enough. But I think that egg beater spinner will eventually find a way underneath Kraken. Once they hit it once, we know the sort of damage Black Dragon is capable of. I reckon Kraken does have a shot at keeping that weapon at bay, but it's going to take some insane concentration over the 3 minutes of fighting to make sure the Brazilians don't get round the back or get underneath. So I'm going to have to say it's going to be Black Dragon by knockout for this fight. So this is a fight that has been threatening to happen since, in my opinion, Orlando Maker Faire 2018, where we saw the debut of one of these robots. And that robot was Mammoth. Not that Mammoth. And yes, I know I made that joke in the last episode. You're not going to stop me. Anyway, this is the big bot battle. Ricky Williams and Mammoth against Jonathan Schultz and Huge. Huge as a concept started off in a much smaller weight class and proved to be a very difficult robot to tag then. That turned out to be an accurate premonition for what was to come, as Huge is one of the most difficult robots to fight. It has made the top 16 twice in a row now, beating robots that are far more established in the fighting scene than themselves. After a pretty blessed run in Season 3, we were asking ourselves, was this a fluke, or could Jonathan Schultz and team keep this up? Huge showed some great vulnerabilities to a certain weapon type, horizontal spinners of course, and there was a big question as to whether other teams can just figure them out. And Season 4 showed that this was not a fluke, and it is very difficult for other teams, no matter the experience, no matter the quality, to actually figure out how to defeat this design. It took an insane driving performance by Matt Vasquez to put Huge out of the top 16 last season. While Huge was the biggest robot present in Season 3, Mammoth came in for Season 4 and decided to take that mantle away from it pretty decisively. Ricky Williams showed up at Orlando Maker Faire 2018 with this design, and no one really knew what to make of it. It showed itself to be pretty competent and a very difficult design to tag as well, same as Huge. When they were invited to Season 4 of Battlebots, they showed that they were similarly difficult to fight for certain weapon types. However, they showed a certain vulnerability to vertical spinners, which unfortunately for them is the most prevalent type of weapon at Battlebots. They returned this season with some armor for those exposed drive motors, but the basic design remains the same. And from what I can tell, the same can be said for Huge as well. Regarding the actual fight, as I've said before, Mammoth is quite vulnerable to vertical spinners, and that's exactly what Huge is, of course. Huge has a very powerful vertical spinner. We've seen it do damage to all sorts of robots in the past. The question here, however, is how tough is Mammoth's frame? It's a 250-pound robot with no armor and no heavy spinning weapon or something like that. I'd imagine that its weapon is relatively light as far as weapons go. So that frame is, by that logic, probably very, very thick and very tough, right? And so the question is, can Huge start breaking that frame apart? So I think Mammoth actually has a chance here if it can get purchase on Huge and toss it around a bit. But the only real way that they can immobilize Huge is by tossing it out of the arena, and I honestly don't know if Huge fits anywhere outside of the arena, right? So ultimately, I see this either being a knockout to Huge, in which they actually are able to take off the wheels or do so much damage to the drive motors that they stop working, or a judge's decision in which damage will rule the day and Huge will probably do all the damage that will occur in this fight. And I think after a 3-minute fight, Huge will have enough opportunities to do damage to the exposed wheels and motors. So I'm going to have to go for Huge and by knockout. So as I alluded to during the intro to this episode, the biggest mistake that I made in my predictions for last episode was discounting Malice. Bunny Soriel has been on a couple of Battlebots teams in the past and obviously has picked up a lot in that time about building heavyweight robots. And that is something that I completely missed. Here's my chance to make up for that, because now we have 2 team captains who have been on Battlebots teams in the past and are in much the same situation as Bunny. First up, we have Kevin Milchevsky, who has in the past been part of the Western Allied Robotics team, which has brought Warhawk to Battlebots. This season he's brought his own robot, Claw Viper, a grappler bot, one of a dying breed. It causes me to think back to 2015 Battlebots when this all started, and you had robots such as Overhaul and Bite Force and Stinger, sort of. And these were all grapple bots, and it felt like that this was going to be one of the main classes of robot, so to speak, moving forward. But they've fallen off, with Paul Ventimiglia jumping ship entirely, Overhaul not really returning for the past couple of seasons, and neither did Stinger. So it's nice to see a new grapple bot being presented to Battlebots this season. On the other hand, we have a weapons class that I think is on the rise. This is HiJinx, an undercutter, and it's built by Jen Herschenroder, who has also been on a couple of Battlebots teams in the past. First of all, Battle Royale with Cheese. Yeah, we all know how that one turned out. But she was also part of Scorpios, and has nicked Orion Beach from that team, who used to be the captain of Scorpios, and has brought him onto Team HiJinx. And this team has brought a very colourful robot. I love the colour scheme, I love the look of it. The wheels look a little vulnerable and spindly, I'm not too sure about those, but as long as that undercutter bar keeps spinning, the wheels probably aren't going to be too vulnerable, perhaps. It also has a wedge at the back in case the weapon goes down and they need to be able to attack or defend in some way. So this fight comes down to modularity, in my opinion. And the question is whether or not Claw Viper has a wedge to deal with the undercutter bar. This, I don't know. So it makes it a little bit difficult to call this fight, but I just have to go with the information that I have at hand. So, assuming that they don't have that wedge, those forks, both the ones on the weapon and the wedges at the front look, well, it looks like the bolts holding them on are pretty sturdy, but the question is whether or not they can hold up to the power of HiJinx. And that bar is heavy and it spins up fast. It is an incredibly scary weapon. So I think we could see a repeat here of the Scorpius versus Bloodsport fight, in that Claw Viper is going to have to close the distance quickly, but the spin-up time of HiJinx will see it take too much damage after repeated attacks. I don't see the wedges on the front of Claw Viper surviving. I don't see the weapon surviving if they try and use it aggressively. The one chance for Claw Viper is if HiJinx's weapon bursts into flames, essentially, which is quite possible. But I'm going to make a completely unfounded guess here and take HiJinx's reliability over Claw Viper's durability and say HiJinx with a knockout. For Fight 6, we welcome back a robot that was largely ignored by the edit last season, so it's really nice to see them get a televised fight here. That robot is Extinguisher, and the captain is John Flark IV. This is a modular design. It can run with the hammer, a vertical spinner, and they also refer to a third weapon, which I think is a fire extinguisher that they've put on the front. But it could refer to something else as well, I'm not sure. Last season, they went 1-3 and became the only robot that the Four Horsemen has defeated twice, funnily enough. So with that robot, it might seem a little unfair that they're coming up against a former Battlebots champion. This is Perfect Phoenix, and despite it being a Battlebots champion, if you haven't heard that name before, that's fair enough, because this robot once went by the name of Brutality. It was built by Paul Ventimiglia and won the Battlebots championship in 2009. So the fact that this robot is now outdated by 11 years perhaps makes this a more fair matchup. Of course, the robot has been upgraded by none other than Ray Billings himself, but it's unclear to me as to how extensive those upgrades are. It is also being piloted by Tyler Nguyen, an 11-year-old who has an extensive history in robot combat, including coming third in the Battlebots Beetleweight tournament. The Hazard-esque overhead bar spinner has been brought back into fashion by the likes of Bloodsport last season, so we'll see if Perfect Phoenix can continue the form of that weapon type. Extinguisher has a fairly chunky wedge on the front of it, which may absorb a lot of what Perfect Phoenix can throw at it, and just by looking at the two robots, it seems that Extinguisher's axe mechanism is a little too high for Perfect Phoenix to actually strike. And I also have it on good authority that Extinguisher will be entering this battle with their axe. Well, it's more of a hammer, I should say, in the style of Shatter. And it's an interesting choice to still go with that hammer. Putting the vertical spinner on the front makes them kind of look like a red Witch Doctor, and, well, Witch Doctor went very well last season. Who doesn't want to have a design like them? But I really appreciate teams sticking true to perhaps less optimal weapons like hammers. So in terms of predictions, I think I'm really leaning towards Perfect Phoenix for this one. And while they did fight 10 years apart from one another, I still think a winning record in 2009 is better than going 1-3 in undercard matches in 2019. I think Brutality will still have it as Perfect Phoenix and be able to get around to the sides, start smacking the wheels. I'm pretty sure, despite Tyler Nguyen's inexperience with heavyweight robots, he'll still be able to manage this challenge. And yeah, I just don't see Paul Ventimiglia built, Ray Billings assisted, and 11-year-old genius-driven robot losing to Extinguisher. And we have to give credit to John Flack. It looks a lot better than last season, but I'm going to still have to give this one to Perfect Phoenix by knockout. It's been a while since we've seen Hydra, isn't it? Oh, right, wrong Hydra, again. They gotta stop stealing their names from classic Robot Wars. So yes, it hasn't been that long since we've seen Hydra. Well, it has still been too long given the COVID delay. But anyway, Team Whyachi is back again. This time it's Jake Hewitt at the sticks of Hydra, the only hydraulic flipper in Battlebots, and one of the most powerful flippers ever seen in robot combat. It had a stellar season last year, going 4-0 and into the top 16 fairly easily, causing untold damage for a flipper along the way. But you know what's more impressive than 4-0? It's coming second, and that was the tail of the tape for the next team up, Witch Doctor. Andrea and Mike Galately are back after having the season that I think we all knew that they could have if they got everything right. We finally saw Witch Doctor live up to its potential. So for this season, the question is, can they maintain that streak? It's an insanely effective design, so well driven by Mike, and has some devastating power in that vertical spinner, along with just one of the most hectic themes we've ever seen as well for a Battlebot. The costuming, the paintwork, everything. Witch Doctor has been around for quite a while. We saw all and more of the heavyweights potential in Season 1 of Battlebots, but then it started a downhill trend, especially with that upset loss to Red Devil in Season 2 and having serious reliability issues in Season 3. But as I've said, they hit their stride in Season 4, some amazing fights, some incredible destruction, and they knocked off some huge names and put down some Aussie upstarts. It's okay, I still love you guys. They came to Battlebots this season almost on a whim. They were pretty last minute when they decided to rock up, so I'm not sure how much has changed in Witch Doctor from last season, but you know, that's okay. They came second to Bite Force last season, and Bite Force ain't here. Hydra, on the other hand, has made some changes. The obvious one is the paintwork, which looks amazing, and then you've got those multiple wedgelets at the front, which I assume are hinged. So last season, Hydra had a fairly decent 2-1 record against vertical spinners. The one loss came against Minotaur when they made a mistake on the flip and were severely punished for it. Daniel Freitas took advantage of that and showed just how vulnerable Hydra is if robots are actually able to get purchase on the sides of it with their weapons. The other two fights against vertical spinners were against Warhawk and Hypershock, and while Hydra did cop a couple of hits from Warhawk, it showed that yes, it does have some durability. It doesn't just fall apart the moment a spinner hits it. The thing was though, both of those fights ended quite prematurely. I don't expect Witch Doctor to be thrown out of the arena like Hypershock was, and I also don't expect this to happen to it. So the question is, how long can Jake Hewitt hold on for without making a mistake? I don't think Witch Doctor is going to conk out on its own this season. So the 3-minute battle gives Mike plenty of chances to get around to the sides and actually do damage, and we know that it's going to be a lot of damage when they hit. While I reckon Hydra's going to give Witch Doctor a run, they didn't come second last year for nothing. I can see while Hydra will get a couple of flips on Witch Doctor, I'm fairly certain of that, Witch Doctor will be able to recover pretty well, get around to the sides of Hydra, and make sure that that weapon's power doesn't go to waste in this fight. And we saw how quickly Hydra crumbled under the pressure of Minotaur. So I'm going to have to give this one, once again, a knockout, this time to Witch Doctor. Alright, thank you so much guys for listening to my Battlebots preview and predictions. Can't wait to get this one up without any hiccups this time, fingers crossed. We'll see how we go. So my predictions for this episode are, just as a recap, remarkably all of these are by knockout. Shatter, Ribot, Black Dragon, Huge, HiJinx, Perfect Phoenix, and Witch Doctor. Alright, hope to see you guys in episode 3. Hope you guys enjoyed. Do a like, push buttons, say words, whatever you want to do. However you want to express gratitude or disgust, go for it. Catch you in the next one.